I'm Chef Julia, and today I'm going to be making something that I'm going to eat for my Christmas dessert. And it's a cranberry orange cake with pecans. And this is a finished one. I'm going to get it out of here and put some frosting on it a little bit later, but I wanted you to know I've already made one because it would be impossible to make one in a short video. But we're going to go through the steps of how I got it to this point. And I love this cake because it is delicious, and it's really hard to make a whole food plant-based cake that doesn't have oil, eggs, or dairy products in it, and to have it taste really good. Like, this cake is so good that I'll eat a piece, just a small piece, with a cup of hot green tea and savor every bite, but every bite has a little bit of dried fruits and some pecans, and it's not too sweet, but it's sweet enough. And it's just the best cake ever. So we're gonna go ahead and make it, and then I hope you'll make it for yourself and you'll see. And I was inspired to make a cranberry orange pineapple coconut version based on all the things I used to make during the holidays. I used to make my kids all these different Jell-O molds that would have cranberries and pineapples and oranges, or I would make these layered salads, or these cherry Cool Whip cherry, walnut, whatever. They were just like a bowl of sweet stuff, and I don't make stuff like that anymore. It's just not what I eat. So, but I still kind of like those bright flavors and textures this time of year especially. So this cake can be made any time of the year. Just change up the types of dried fruits and things you put in it. But for today, we're going to make it my sort of holiday flavors. And we're going to start with the wet ingredients. So I'm going to just put them in my blender because we're going to be blending these ingredients. So I need to start with, this is pretty simple, a half cup of water. So let me get the water right out of my sink here. Wow, that's pretty good. I got a half a cup in one try. Okay, and then we're going to put in 1/4 of a cup of maple syrup. So let me get that, that's behind me. In fact, let me just bring all the wet ingredients over here without dropping them so you can see what they are. And I'll put them right down here in front of me. So I'm going to use 1/4 of a cup of maple syrup. Make sure it's real maple syrup and not some kind of artificial cane syrup blend, because you'll taste that and it won't be what you think it is. It will have a very artificial flavor. So make sure it's the real thing. It does make a difference. And then we're going to put a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. Just going to pour it right in here. And I like this apple cider vinegar with the mother. It really does say that. It says apple cider vinegar with the mother. And it's this really good tasting apple cider vinegar. And it does make a difference, because one time I sent my husband to the store to get apple cider vinegar, and he brought the store brand or something Walmart had. And I thought, oh, well, you know, it's apple cider vinegar, it's probably fine. But then when I tasted it, it didn't taste very good. So I ended up not using it. 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Use the best one you can find. This is my kind of standard pure vanilla extract, but I know there's a lot of other ones out there that you could be using. And then I'm going to put in my kind of secret ingredient. Let me get this out of the way so you can see all my other stuff. Is not really a secret ingredient, but kind of an unexpected ingredient. And that is a cooked sweet potato. So this is a sweet potato I baked earlier, and it is a Hanna or Jersey sweet potato. And the Jersey sweet potatoes they're very light colored. They're kind of a yellow inside. They're not bright orange. And they taste really good. They have I don't think they're as sweet. Some people would say they're sweeter, but to me they taste a little bit different. They don't have as strong of a flavor as a orange sweet potato. So I'm going to put 3/4 of a cup. So I've got 1/4 of a cup measure. It's a little messy to get this out. It's kind of sticky. And measuring it is not, you know, it's not like a puree out of a can or something. It's just right out of the skin. But that's how I did it. And oh, I cooked the sweet potato at 400 degrees for 1 hour. Okay, depending on the size of your sweet potato. This one took, I think it actually took 50 minutes because these were not very big. They were, this sweet potatoes that I made today were on the skinny side. So I took them out at 50 minutes. And you want them to be soft. You don't want them to have any hard areas in them. If they're thick sweet potatoes, like sometimes you'll get these same sweet potatoes and they'll be gigantic, you know, they'll weigh a pound each or something. You definitely, rinse my hands off. You definitely will have to cook it longer. And sometimes it could take anywhere from 50 minutes to over an hour. So, you know, cook it until, how I know it's done is I squeeze it. You know, I'll squeeze the sweet potato, and if you can push in on it, then you know it's done. If it's still, when you squeeze it, it's still hard, it's not done. Okay, so you're gonna have to bear with me. I'm gonna have to blitz this in the blender just so it's nice and combined. So I know there's nothing more boring than listening to the sound of a blender, but it won't take me very long. Take long. And that, what that does is that gets the sweet potato and all the ingredients together, but we're going to set this aside because we have to get our dry ingredients together before we can put the cake batter together. So I'm going to get the dry ingredients together. I'm going to move my wet ingredients over here out of the way so they're not blocking any view of anything. And then we're going to start measuring some things out. So we're going to start with some whole wheat pastry flour. And that looks like this over here. It is just a bag of flour. And whole wheat pastry flour is lighter than whole wheat flour. So people will say, can I substitute whole wheat flour for whole wheat pastry flour? Because sometimes they can't find it in the store. And so I'll always tell them that it's really not the same. It's not going to be the same recipe if you just try to substitute. I need 1 cup, but the substitute for whole wheat pastry flour, if you absolutely can't find it, is half whole wheat flour and half regular all-purpose unbleached flour. So if you absolutely, you know, cannot find whole wheat pastry flour, that's about the only thing you could do as a substitute. So just remember that. Okay, so then our other dry ingredient is going to be a 1/3 cup of carbonado sugar. And this is just kind of a, if you looked at it, it's kind of a crystally coarse sugar. Kind of like a brown sugar, but not exactly. So I'm going to just get a scoop of that and put it in here. And then I need some salt, 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. That's what I use for everything. Now I don't use any kind of table salt. So when I went to culinary school, that was what we used for everything, was kosher salt. I need 1/2 teaspoon. Put that in here. And then some baking powder. Just your typical old baking powder. The baking powder can has its own nice little lip in here so that you can just make your nice even teaspoon. That's what it's for. My spoon was wet. I know some things I tell you are probably obvious, like who doesn't know that, but I swear people will tell me that they didn't know some things I thought were pretty obvious facts. And then I'll tell them and they'll say, well, I didn't know that. Same thing with your baking soda. It has this little straight edge thing here on the box that you can level off your baking soda. So 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And then we have to mix this up really well. And the best way I found for mixing up dry ingredients like flour is to use a whisk. You know, back in Grandma's day, sifting things together meant that they took a sifter and, you know, squeezed a little handle and they would sift it. Well, our sifting is more combining and we're using the whisk, and that works just fine. All right, so now we have that, and, you know, we're going to take our wet ingredients and combine them with the dry ingredients. So I've got to get all this stuff out of here, and that's going to be a little bit tricky because sometimes when you use a blender, things will get stuck on the blender blades at the bottom of the blender. So we want to get all of this out here. We don't want to leave any. So if you have a tool like this, it's really handy because my tool goes under the blender blades and then it turns it around, and then I'm able to get everything out from under the blades. If you can't do that, then what happens is, you know, a lot of the ingredient will be stuck and you won't have it and you'll need it. And then the other thing that I use to get things out of the blender, or I just get a spatula, because the spatula is good for getting the ingredients off the side of the blender. That blender scraper gets the things that are caught under the blades, but it doesn't do a very good job of getting things off the side of the blender. So you really want to make sure, I know it may seem a little picky, but we don't want to leave behind any of our wet ingredients here, because we don't want our cake to be dry. So you see how much time I spent to really get everything out. And if you even wanted to take a little bit of liquid, like just a tablespoon of water, and reblend this to make it liquid, then you could use that too. But I'm not going to do that today because it would be kind of time consuming. So I think we got enough out. And we really want to mix these two things up, the wet ingredients and the dry ingredients, but we don't want to over mix it. Just like you do with any cake, you know, we want to make sure we combine them, but we don't want to, you know, spend a lot of time vigorously mixing our cake mix, because if you do that, then you end up with tough cake batter. So we just want to combine it to where it's all moistened, and then we'll start adding our other ingredients, our delicious fruits and our nuts. Okay, so this is about good. So you see, if you look at it, I've just combined them, but they're not, I didn't spend a lot of time mixing that up. It's mixed up well enough. So now I'm going to take our delicious ingredients that we're going to be adding and talk a little bit about that, and talk about the options. First of all, let's go ahead and add our fruit. We want to have a total of a half a cup of fruit. So I'm just going to get a half a cup, and I'm going to fill it with my dried fruit. And instead of measuring it out, I'm just going to kind of fill up this little half cup. But it averages out to be about 2 tablespoons of each dried fruit, to the point where you have about a total of 8 tablespoons. So that's about 2 cranberry, because remember the name of the cake is Cranberry Orange Cake, so quite a few cranberries. I'm going to add some pineapple, because a cake that I remember, or a salad, or a dish I remember, would always have crushed pineapple in it. All these grandma recipes would have some kind of crushed pineapple. So I'm going to add pineapple in memory of crushed pineapple. Coconut, you know, I would eat a lot of things that had coconut and cherries and pineapples and whatever. So I thought, you know, let me add a little coconut. It's like 2 tablespoons. So I still haven't filled up my little half cup. The last ingredient I'm going to put in there is, remember the name of the cake is Orange Cranberry Cake with Pecan. So dried oranges are a main component. And I'm going to put 2 slices of this dried orange in here. And I got these from Trader Joe's, of all places. And they're just, all they are dried orange slices, and they are sweetened. So, you know, you can't have dried orange that doesn't have some sugar in it. So this cake that I'm making is not some kind of sugar-free, super healthy dessert. It does have sugar in it. There's no way around it because of the dried fruit, you know, and the fact that it's a cake. So, like I was saying in the beginning, this is the kind of thing where eat a very small piece, you know, enjoy it, have it with some hot tea or coffee, and have it for a special occasion. You know, this is for my family Christmas dinner. So it's a special occasion. It's not, I'm not having it for Tuesday night, nothing, dessert. I'm having it because it's a special thing. and it would make a really nice gift. So if you're thinking of a gift for somebody who eats a plant-based diet and doesn't eat a typical kind of sweet or dessert, this would be a really good one because it has, it's moistened by sweet potato instead of moistened by butter and all the usual things we use to moisten a cake. So you see I've got my half measuring cup full of my fruits, and that's plenty. That's all I wanted. And I'm going to put that in here. I'm not going to mix it up yet till I add my pecans. So let me talk about pecans for a minute. Let me get the food out of the way. And this coconut is unsweetened coconut flakes. So, I grew up eating the baker's coconut, the sweetened kind that is white, and it's sweetened and it's really good. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But we're using the unsweetened kind. And then I'm going to use a cup of pecans. And I measured this out already, but I wanted to talk about my pecans. I went to a place called San Saba, and it's in Texas, and it's the pecan capital of Texas. And we were there in November, and we got, you're not going to believe this, but we got 20 pounds of pecans, and my husband shells them so they look like this, and then we're going to freeze them. But they taste better than any kind of pecan you can buy in the store. They're very plump, and you can just tell they're different. They're not dried out in any way, because sometimes when you get the pecans from the grocery store, they've been in the cellophane package for who knows how long. Maybe, well, there's one that fell on the floor. If I'm not careful, one of the dogs will come over here to grab it off the floor, but I don't know. That one over there, Taro, is sleeping soundly, so I don't think he notices that anything dropped to the floor. And then Mochi is over on the couch. So the dogs, my two boxers, Mochi and Taro, this is their favorite room of the house because it's all surrounded by windows. It used to be the back porch. So this is their room. This is where they love to hang out. And so when I started doing these videos, they would follow me in here, and I never really noticed it because they're always in here. And then sometimes in the background of my videos, people would say, I heard a funny sound. It was like some kind of machine or a motor. What was that noise? And then I had to say, that was my boxer snoring. So I don't hear him today, but if he gets started, sometimes one or both of them will start making their sleeping noises. Okay, so I chopped up the pecans. It was a whole cup of pecans. So you see my cake batter is very, very thick with pecans and cranberries and candied orange and pineapple and coconut, and it's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I love this. And because it's plant-based, we could just eat the batter uncooked because it doesn't have any raw ingredients. Okay, so we have to cook it, we have to bake it. So we're going to put it in a loaf pan. This is your typical 9x5 loaf pan, and I have lined it with parchment paper. All I did was I cut parchment paper. I cut a piece this way and that way and just set them in the pan because we don't use oil. Therefore, we have to use parchment paper. If we don't, the cake will stick to the pan. Unless you have, there are some loaf pans and such that are completely, they're non-stick. They have a silicone coating. I think USA Pans has one, and there are some other brands. And I made my other one in a USA pan. But since everybody doesn't have those, I went ahead and lined both my pans just because. And now if I wanted to make it really look even more festive, see how the top is kind of plain? There's nothing on the top to make it look, all that interesting. What I could do is I could put a few more cranberries on it and just kind of put them over the very top. So when it cooks, you'll see the cranberries on top, because remember, we're calling it cranberry orange cake. So let's have some pretty cranberries on it. I didn't do that on my other one, but it made me think that I should. So then I'm just going to put this in the oven at 350 degrees for 45 minutes. And I'm not putting it in my oven right now because my oven is really loud. It makes this because it has a convection fan. So if I turn my oven on, you'd hear this loud sound, so I'll put it in the oven after the video's over. But remember, I already made one. I'm gonna move these out of the way. I already made one of these cakes earlier today, and I'm gonna go ahead and take it out of the cake pan. And you see, this is one that I lined. And I lined it, and then this way I can just take it right off of the parchment paper, and it didn't stick, and you could see all around. It's fine, and then I can put it on my serving platter, which I'll just put it on this white platter like that. Throw this away, and then I can put the frosting on it. So let's talk a little bit about the frosting. I've already made my frosting because the frosting is something that is so simple, and it's also made in my blender, and I didn't want to have to clean out my blender and make the frosting, so I made it ahead. And I think everyone could make this. It's just so simple. The frosting looks like this, and it's nothing more than cashews that have been soaked for at least an hour. So I get these whole roasted cashews. They're unsalted and they're unroasted, they're raw. And I took a cup and I just soaked them in water for an hour at least. I probably soaked them for more than that. And I just put them in my blender, the Vitamix high-speed blender, along with maple syrup, almond milk, lemon juice, vanilla extract, and a little apple cider vinegar. So, and the recipe will be in the show notes along with the cake recipe, and you'll find it very easily. But the secret to the frosting, if there's nothing complicated about it, it's very simple. Get this piece off. It's very simple, but the true secret of this frosting is you have to blend it until it's silky smooth. I'm going to go ahead and put it on my cake, but I want you to see that it's not chunky. It doesn't have any kind of undissolved cashews in it. It doesn't have any little chunks of anything, and that's a big mistake that I'll see people make. Is they'll make the cashew frosting for a plant-based cake, but they don't blend it long enough in the blender. So what happens is they end up having this, I call it grainy, like there's grains of undissolved cashews all throughout their frosting, or whatever it is. It may be cheese sauce, whatever it is, it will have a bunch of little, whoops, getting a little messy here. It will be grainy, and we don't want that. We don't want it to have little noticeable chunks of undissolved cashews, and it won't taste good either. When you start to eat it, you'll say, ooh, this is like a little crunchy cashews in here, and we don't, you wouldn't enjoy it. So make sure it's smooth, and I'm just kind of smoothing it around this whole cake. And if you put this in the refrigerator, the frosting will start to harden and chill and set up a little bit, and it'll taste really good when it's chilled. So it's that simple. We're just putting this coating of our cashew frosting on it. It pretty much takes this whole bowl of cashews. Let's say that you don't like frosting and you don't like cashews, and this is not your thing. You don't want to have frosting on your cranberry orange cake. So what you can do is just keep it plain. It tastes really good with nothing on it. You don't have to put any kind of frosting on it. But I personally like the frosting because it makes it have this extra richness. And just remember, it's not something that I'm going to eat again for a long time. So if it's a little extra rich, that's okay with me. It's an occasional treat. So, I don't mind that. So now all we have left to do is to eat it. My hand's all messy. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut a slice. See, I think I put my knife over here. I'm going to cut a nice slice, bigger than I would normally eat, just to show you how great it is. And I'm going to put it on a plate. I have a nice plate over here. I've got this pretty orange plate because remember, it's cranberry orange cake. So I thought an orange plate would be nice. And I want to turn it over to show you what it looks like on the inside. And you could see all the pecans And you see all the delicious fruits, the pineapple and everything. And it, you know, everything in it, it didn't sink to the bottom because, and I forgot to show you this, so rewind back to the part where I added the fruits and the dried fruit. Before you add the dried fruit to your batter, take some flour, like take some of the whole wheat pastry flour and kind of sprinkle your dried fruit with a little flour, and that will result in all your fruit being evenly distributed, because sometimes when you're using dried fruit in a cake, it sinks to the bottom. But in this case, because I had put a little bit of flour on it, it didn't do that. And I'll put that in the instructions, in the written instructions. I'll make a note to be sure and sprinkle a little flour on it. So here's what I have. I have my beautiful cake frosted. I have my cup of tea, my green tea. And then all we have to do is get a fork and taste the cake and see how it is. Oh, it's nice and moist, and it's full of delicious fruits and nuts. So good. So make the cake. The recipe will be in the show notes. And if you don't like any of the dried orange, cranberry, dried fruit, some other options are things like dried apricots, dried cherries, raisins, golden raisins, dates, and pretty much you can go through the dried fruit section of the store and just pick out any dried fruit that looks good to you. Just remember, you just fit all your dried fruit in a half cup, and that's it. So I hope you enjoy it if you make it, and it would really make a nice gift. And if you want to keep it for yourself, you can freeze this cake in single size slices. So slice a piece, wrap it up in some kind of plastic wrap, put all the wrap slices in a Ziploc bag, put it in the freezer, and for weeks you can take one slice out, let it sit and thaw for a few minutes, and then you can sit down and enjoy one slice of this delicious cake at a time. So I hope you enjoy making it. Thanks for watching this video.